I trusted my daughter's husband until I saw him sneaking into my bedroom in the middle of the night, his pockets full of glitter. At first, I thought I was dreaming. A faint glow crept through the hallway, spilling a sliver of light beneath my bedroom door. I blinked, unsure if I was awake. Then I saw the shadow, slow and deliberate, moving with the kind of precision you don't associate with someone just getting a glass of water. The door creaked open, just slightly, and I saw him. Blake, my son-in-law. He was tiptoeing in like a man who thought himself clever, like someone who'd been watching for patterns, for weaknesses. He didn't know I'd been watching him too. His hand reached toward the dresser, my dresser, and the moment his fingers brushed the brass handle, there was a snap. A spring-loaded mechanism I'd rigged myself released, and the drawer burst open in a flash of chaos. A cloud of green paint and gold glitter exploded into his face like a vengeful spirit. He staggered back, blinded, choking, clutching at his eyes. The glitter clung to his skin, stuck in the wet paint, catching the hallway light, and turning him into something between a clown and a cautionary tale. That's when I turned on the lamp. He froze. There we stood, me in my flannel pajamas, him covered in emerald paint and shimmering dust, like some garish Christmas decoration gone wrong. His mouth opened, closed. In his hand was a small brass key. Not the real one. A fake I'd placed there myself. Looking for something? I said, my voice calm, like a father-in-law catching his daughter's husband raiding the fridge. But this wasn't about snacks. This was about betrayal. I'd trusted him, welcomed him into my home when he and Rachel said they were struggling. I'd turned my study into a guest room, bought fresh linens, made their favorite lasagna the night they arrived. And this is how he repaid me. By sneaking into my room at 2:37 a.m. with a counterfeit key and pockets full of glitter, to test whether I was as naive as he believed. Frank, I was just looking for aspirin, he stammered. In my locked dresser drawer. Silence. You sleepwalk often, Blake? He blinked rapidly, flecks of gold catching on his eyelashes. A pathetic, glittering mess. I picked up the remote and hit play on the camera feed. There it was, footage of him entering the room, glancing behind him like a cartoon thief. The fake key in his hand. The booby-trapped drawer blowing up in his smug little face. This is going straight to Rachel, I said. And to the police if I feel like it. Blake didn't say another word. He backed out of the room, one hand still shielding his eyes from the paint, the other hanging limp by his side. I watched him slink down the hallway like a defeated raccoon. I should have been angry, but all I felt was confirmation, because now I had proof. The next morning, over coffee, Rachel asked why there was glitter in the hallway. I smiled and said, just a little trap. For pests. She didn't laugh, but she would soon, when she finally saw what her husband had become. When Rachel called me in late March, her voice trembled the way it used to when she had nightmares as a child. Blake lost his job, Dad, she said. They cut half the company. She didn't ask for help. Not directly, but I heard it, the quiet desperation under her words. I imagined her sitting on the edge of her bed, clutching the phone with one hand, Blake pacing behind her, rehearsing some speech about unfair markets and incompetent managers. So I offered. I'm a widower. The house in Twin Falls has 5 bedrooms, too many for one man. The hardwood floors are old but strong. The kitchen still smells faintly of rosemary when it rains, a ghost of my wife, Elaine's cooking. And the study, my sanctuary, became a guest room overnight. I cleared the bookshelves, bought new linens, ordered extra towels from that catalog Rachel used to love as a teenager. I even went to the trouble of fixing the squeaky floorboard outside the bathroom. No one likes to feel like they're disturbing the quiet. They arrived the next Friday. Rachel came through the front door with a forced smile and a duffel bag. Blake followed, wheeling a suitcase with one hand and holding a tray of coffees in the other like some sort of peace offering. Housewarming gifts, he said, grinning like he belonged. I made lasagna that night, Elaine's old recipe, the one with extra bechamel and that kick of nutmeg she swore by. Rachel took 2 helpings. Blake asked for the Wi-Fi password before we finished eating. He offered to help clean the dishes, told me how grateful they were, said things like, "You didn't have to do all this, Frank," while carefully wiping the countertop like he was auditioning for gratitude. At first, I believed him. Blake woke early, ran errands, watered the garden, laughed at my bad jokes, and watched game shows with me on Tuesdays. Once, he even offered to drive me to the bank for some errands. "It's no trouble," he'd said. "Just let me know when." That's the thing about people like Blake. They study you. Learn your rhythms. They don't show their teeth right away. No, they wait. They let you soften. They build a new routine around you. One that makes them seem useful, harmless, like family. For weeks, it worked. We became a trio. Rachel started cooking again, simple things, but it warmed the house. Blake set up a projector in the den for movie nights. I caught him once staring at my old grandfather clock in the hallway, nodding to himself as if mentally calculating its value. But I brushed it off. Then came the third Sunday. We were in the living room, watching reruns of a game show Elaine used to love. Rachel had gone upstairs to take a call. Blake turned to me and said, "Frank, if you ever need help with financial stuff, like organizing documents or estate planning, I've done some of that work. Just putting it out there." I remember smiling. He thought he was subtle. I said, "Thanks, Blake. I've got it handled." He nodded, a little too slowly, a little too carefully. The next morning, I found him in the garage, fiddling with the breaker box. Said the lights in the hallway were flickering, he explained. Funny, they weren't the day before. That same afternoon, I noticed the mail had already been brought in, opened and sorted, even. My bank statement had a faint tear at the top like someone had slit it open with a knife, not a letter opener. Still, I said nothing, because I wanted to be sure. I started marking things. I put a tiny line inside the flap of every envelope. A scratch on the inside lip of the safe in my bedroom. I made a second copy of my house key, sprayed it with a trace of invisible powder, harmless, but it glowed under UV light. Blake never noticed the small changes. He was too busy watching me. I started going on longer walks. Took an extra 15 minutes at the grocery store. Told them I was meeting an old friend from the Legion Hall on Thursdays. All lies. I just needed to know what they'd do when I wasn't home. The illusion of peace was beautiful, comfortable, but it was exactly that, an illusion. And I was done living in someone else's dream. The first time Blake asked how often I left the house, it was subtle. We were in the kitchen, he was buttering toast, and I was folding the newspaper. "You ever get out much, Frank? I mean, besides groceries?" I glanced at him over my reading glasses. "Why do you ask?" He shrugged. That easygoing, good son-in-law act still intact. "Just wondering if you needed a ride somewhere. Or if I should help set up some kind of senior transport app on your phone." I told him I was fine, but I watched his face closely. He didn't look disappointed, not exactly, but there was something in the tightness of his smile, something calculating. That afternoon, he spent nearly an hour in the garage, claiming to be reorganizing my tools. When I checked later, nothing had moved, except the drawer where I kept spare keys and the backup copy of my will. That was slightly ajar. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't ready yet. The next red flag came on a Wednesday, just after dinner. Rachel had gone to bed early with a migraine. Blake lingered in the living room, flipping through channels like he was waiting for something. "Frank," he said during a commercial break, "you got a lot of nice stuff here. That grandfather clock alone, it's antique, right?" I nodded slowly. "Been in my family since before the war." He whistled. "Bet it's worth a fortune. Ever thought about getting things appraised? Just in case." "In case of what?" I asked. He blinked. "I mean insurance. You never know." I could see the gears turning behind his eyes. Not concern. Strategy. That weekend, I overheard him on the phone. Thought I wasn't home. I'd gone out the front door, but circled back through the side gate to check on a bird feeder. The den window was open. "Yeah," she said, "the will's already done. So we just gotta bide our time," he whispered. "The old guy's got everything lined up. The house, the accounts, it's all there." A pause. "No, he has no clue. He still thinks I'm being helpful. Hell, he thanked me for washing his car last week." I stood there in the garden, pruning shears in hand, fingers clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. He was planning something, not just hoping for an inheritance. He was maneuvering, and he thought I was blind. Then came the aspirin lie. I walked into my study late one night, couldn't sleep. The room smelled like aftershave, and the desk drawers, usually closed flush, were slightly open. Not wide, just enough to say someone had been careless or hasty. Blake was in the hallway, pretending to look for something in the linen closet. "Said you had aspirin in here, Frank. Got a headache. I keep all my medication in the kitchen. Always have." That night, I didn't even confront him. I just stood in the dark after he left the hallway, heart pounding. My late wife Elaine used to say I had a gift for patience, for waiting out storms until they broke themselves against the rocks. Now I understood why. Because when people show you who they are, You don't interrupt them. You let them speak. And then you build your wall, brick by brick, behind their backs. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in bed with my eyes open, staring at the cracked plaster on the ceiling like it held answers. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, stretched tight, like piano wire. I kept hearing Blake's voice in my head, over and over, like a broken loop. The old guy's got everything lined up. I knew what I had to do. If I wanted the truth, I had to catch it in its raw form, unfiltered, unprepared. So I waited until midnight. Then I slipped out of bed, pulled the old baby monitor from the closet. Rachel had left it behind when Emma was born, long before she met Blake. I'd kept it out of sentiment, thinking maybe someday it'd be used again for grandkids visiting for Christmas. Instead, I paired the receiver with a new trick, the voice-activated recording app on my phone. I slid the transmitter into the hallway vent near the guest room. Then I waited, and at 1:14 a.m., I got it. Blake's voice, low and sharp, slicing through the vent like it was aimed directly at my throat. Yeah, he's loaded. I've seen the account statements. The guy's got more stash than I thought. House is probably worth 6 figures alone. A pause. He was pacing. I could hear the rhythm in his footsteps. Tomorrow, while she's at that dentist appointment, I'll grab everything. Jewelry, documents. Hell, maybe even the safe key if I can find it. He won't even notice until it's too late. Another pause. Then, more confidently, Rachel thinks I'm helping her dad. She doesn't know a thing. I hit record on my phone. My hands weren't shaking. My breath was steady. There was no panic. Just something deeper, a settling of facts. Like watching a puzzle click into place. His voice, so sure of himself. So certain I was already defeated. I sat in the dark with the soft green glow of the phone screen illuminating the path ahead. He thought he was the predator, but he'd walked straight into a trap of his own making. The next morning, I made French toast. Bacon, sliced apples with cinnamon, a full spread, just the way Rachel liked it as a kid. Blake shuffled in wearing yesterday's hoodie. Smells amazing, he said, rubbing his eyes. Didn't sleep great. I poured him coffee. Try some chamomile tonight, I said. Helps with nerves. He smiled and nodded. I smiled back and imagined him in handcuffs. Then he asked, all casual, you have that dentist appointment today, right? In town. I nodded. Yeah, they're replacing a crown. He sipped his coffee. Want me to drop you off? Appreciate the offer, I said, but I've already got it covered. He shrugged. Just trying to help. I thanked him again, just to watch him squirm a little. That afternoon, I didn't go to the dentist. I went to the hardware store and bought 2 small items, a motion sensor camera and a glitter bomb kit from the novelty aisle, meant for birthday pranks. I customized it in the garage, rigged it to the top drawer of my dresser. I added green paint, non-toxic, but vivid, and I swapped the real safe key with a decoy, dusted with UV powder. Then I placed the camera behind a false panel in the bookshelf, angled perfectly toward the dresser. I was done wondering. Blake had declared war on the wrong man. The next morning, Blake poured the coffee like he always did. 2 sugars for me, a dollop of cream for himself. He sat across the table with the same easy grin, the same false charm. But I saw it now for what it was, a mask worn by a coward. You took your sleeping pills, right, Frank? He asked, casual, like we were old friends sharing inside jokes. I nodded. Of course. He smiled wider, almost in relief. That was the moment I knew. He thought I was helpless. That night, I didn't take the pills. I ground them into the trash and lay fully dressed under the covers, breathing slow and steady. I waited, every muscle alert, every sense sharp. At 2:41 a.m., I heard the creak. My bedroom door, pushed open by a cautious hand. A soft breath. The click of a flashlight. The hush of socked feet on my carpet. He was good, better than I'd expected. Quiet. Smooth. Like he'd done this before. He moved toward the dresser, head on a swivel. I kept my eyes half shut, barely breathing. My phone was already recording from the bookshelf. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the fake brass key, the one I'd planted in the hallway drawer last week, coated in glitter-sensitive resin. He turned it slowly, deliberately, like a man unlocking the final door to his prize. He didn't know I'd wired the drawer to snap the moment it moved more than an inch. Click. The drawer blasted open with a hiss and a pop. A jet of emerald paint and gold glitter shot straight into his face. He screamed, a high, panicked shriek, and stumbled backward into the nightstand, knocking over a lamp and crashing into the floor. I hit the light switch, and there he was, Blake, the charming, helpful, overly kind son-in-law, on the floor, covered in neon green paint, his hair sparkling like a disco ball, his eyes wide with shock. He looked like he'd been assaulted by a Mardi Gras float. "What the hell?" he barked, wiping his face, smearing the glitter deeper into his eyebrows. "Looking for something?" I asked calmly, rising from the bed. My voice didn't shake. I didn't yell. I just hit play on my phone. His voice filled the room, crisp and clear. "Yeah, the old guy's loaded. Tomorrow, while she's at the dentist." He lunged for me, but I stepped back. "You might want to rethink that," I said, and pointed to the blinking red light of the camera on the shelf. "You're being recorded, Blake. Smile for the court." He froze, then slowly backed away, hands in the air, glitter trailing behind him like some cursed Tinkerbell. I was just, what, sleepwalking? Looking for more aspirin. He opened his mouth to lie again. I saw the moment it formed. But he couldn't make it land. Not now. I looked at him, dripping and sparkling, and felt, not anger, not even satisfaction, just clarity. This man had kissed my daughter's forehead like he loved her, held her hand in family photos, called me dad on holidays, and pretended to care. And now, here he was, breaking into my bedroom in the dead of night, looking for keys to the kingdom. "You thought I was asleep," I said. "You thought I was too old, too tired, too dumb to notice." He didn't reply. I stepped closer. "You think you deserve what I built? You think you can slither in here, smile at my daughter, rob me blind, and sneak out the back with a nice inheritance?" Still nothing. I bent down slowly and picked up the fake key he dropped. It was warm, sticky with paint. I placed it carefully on the dresser. "You're going to tell Rachel," I said. "Tonight. Before breakfast. Or I will." He looked like he wanted to argue, but I saw the fear creep in around his eyes. The mask was cracking. I walked to the door, opened it, and gestured. "Go wash yourself off, Blake. You're leaving tracks." He turned and left, glitter falling behind him like breadcrumbs from a very stupid Hansel. When I closed the door, I didn't smile. I didn't feel victory. I felt shame at how close I'd come to letting him get away with it, at how well he'd played the part, at how desperate I had been to believe that Rachel had chosen a good man. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The real confrontation was still coming, and I was done playing the fool. When the door closed behind him, I sat back down on the edge of my bed, staring at the green streaks across the floor like battlefield wounds. Blake's footsteps echoed faintly down the hall. The bathroom door opened, then slammed shut. The old pipes in the walls vibrated. He turned on the shower. I imagined him scrubbing furiously, trying to erase the evidence. But glitter doesn't come off easy. It clings. It lingers. Just like the kind of betrayal that brought it here in the first place. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just sat in my chair by the window, watching the dark turn to gray and then gold as the morning sun crept up behind the pines. There's something cruel about how beautiful the world can look after your trust has been shattered. At 7:30 sharp, Rachel padded into the kitchen in her robe, hair in a bun, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Morning, Dad," she mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. "Smells good." I'd cooked a full breakfast. Eggs, hash browns, bacon, pancakes. Everything she loved. She smiled when she saw it, but her smile faded fast. Because Blake walked in behind her. Still damp. Still glowing. The glitter had clung to the corners of his eyes, to the curve of his ear, to the folds of his neck. No matter how hard he'd scrubbed, it refused to leave him. The green paint had faded to pale smears across his wrists and collarbone, like bruises that hadn't finished blooming. Rachel's eyes widened. What happened to you?" Blake hesitated. "Just for a second. I was trying to find aspirin last night," he said, clearing his throat. "In Dad's room. I tripped over something in the dark." I didn't speak. Not yet. Rachel looked at me, then back at him. "In his room? In the middle of the night?" "I had a headache," he said too quickly. "I thought he might have some of those extra strength ones. The ones he gets prescribed." Rachel turned to me. "Dad." That's when I stood. Not slowly. Not dramatically. Just deliberately. I walked over to the counter, picked up my phone, and placed it on the kitchen table. "I'd like you both to listen to something," I said, calmly. Rachel frowned. "What is it?" I hit play. Blake's voice filled the room. "Yeah, the old guy's loaded. Tomorrow while she's at the dentist. I'll grab everything." Rachel's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Her hand trembled. He won't even notice until it's too late. I know where he keeps the safe key. She turned toward Blake, horror etched across her face. You said. Blake held up his hands. Wait, this is out of context. I was joking with a friend. Who were you talking to? I asked, voice like stone. He didn't answer. I looked at Rachel. He's been poking around my things for weeks. My documents, my drawers. He opened a dresser with a fake key last night, trying to find my safe. Blake opened his mouth again, but this time Rachel raised her hand. Don't, she said. Quiet. Deadly. There was a silence that felt like the air had been vacuumed from the room. Blake took a breath and tried again. Look, Frank's exaggerating. You know how paranoid he's been lately. I turned to him. You called me a lonely old man on that phone call. You said I wouldn't even notice. You said Rachel didn't know anything. His mouth opened, then closed. I looked at Rachel one last time. I let you into my home. I gave you a room, my food, my peace. And this is how you repay me. Rachel's eyes were glassy. Blake, tell me it's not true. He swallowed, looked down at the floor. And that's when it happened. That's when I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper, something older. That ache of being seen as less than human, of being used, passed over, smiled at while being gutted from the inside. I didn't feel like a father in that moment. I felt like an ATM someone forgot to unplug. The rest of the day passed like a scene from a play no one wanted to finish. Rachel barely spoke. Blake hovered around the edges of rooms like a ghost who hadn't been properly invited, trailing apologies and half-sentences that evaporated as soon as they hit the air. I didn't raise my voice, didn't demand confessions. That would have given him power. No, I did something better. I gave him the chance to lie again. That evening, after Rachel had retreated to the porch and the silence between them had thickened to a kind of fog, I walked into the living room where Blake sat, still dappled with stubborn flecks of glitter he hadn't managed to scrub off. You want to explain what you were doing in my drawer last night? I asked, folding my arms across my chest. He looked up, eyes bloodshot but calculating. I told you, he said, more confident now. I had a migraine. I was looking for something strong. You mentioned you had prescription painkillers a few weeks ago. I tilted my head. In the locked drawer at the back of my bedroom dresser? He blinked. Just once. I didn't realize it was locked. I must have grabbed the wrong one. That's when I pulled my phone out of my pocket again. Same recording. This time, I skipped ahead to the final stretch, the part where he talked about the key, the safe, and how I'd never notice. He didn't even bother speaking after that. I walked away before he could try. The next morning, I changed the combination on the safe. I removed the real key from the house entirely and locked it in a safety deposit box in town. I reviewed my will line by line, crossed his name out of every possible corner. Anything Rachel would inherit would be structured, protected. No joint access. No ambiguity. Then I called my lawyer. Frank, she said, voice surprised. You just updated things last year. I'm making adjustments, I replied. Blake Renner is to be excluded from every trust, every provision. I want it in writing, in plain language. If Rachel remains with him, she'll receive nothing directly. The silence on the other end was brief, but knowing. Understood. That afternoon, I took every important document, deed, insurance, investment record, and locked them in a fireproof case. Then I moved it out of the house. He wasn't getting another chance. Not one drawer, not one envelope, not one digit of account information. I even called the locksmith. Every lock in the house changed. When Blake tried to open the garage the next day with the keypad, he stood in front of it for 5 minutes pressing buttons like a monkey at an arcade. I watched from the kitchen window. The best part? I didn't say a word. Let him stew. Let him feel the walls closing in. That night, over a quiet dinner of leftover soup, I caught him staring at the front door like it was the exit from a life he thought he'd owned. Rachel didn't say much, just stirred her spoon and kept glancing between the two of us, like she'd finally realized that the man she married wasn't standing on even ground with the father who'd built it. My revenge wasn't fury. It was precision. It was erasure. Piece by piece, I dismantled every single inch of his scheme, until the only thing he had left to cling to was a lie he couldn't even say out loud anymore. He still hadn't packed, but that part was coming next. And I was ready. 2 mornings later, I set the table for 3, one last time. Rachel shuffled into the kitchen with her cardigan draped around her shoulders like armor. Blake followed a few minutes later, face still raw from shame and denial. I poured the coffee, set down the sugar, and then I said it. I know everything, Blake. And so does Rachel now. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. So I went on. You used my daughter. You tried to rob me. You lied about everything from the moment you stepped through that front door. He opened his mouth, but Rachel beat him to it. Just stop, she said, her voice cracked and low. We heard the recording. There's nothing left to explain. Still, he tried. Always the actor, even with his lines cut short. It was never about the money, he said. It was pressure. I lost my job. I was scared. I made stupid decisions. You plotted. I corrected. You waited until you thought I was vulnerable. You rehearsed. You practiced lies with other people on the phone. You called me a lonely old man. He closed his eyes. Rachel stood slowly, her chair scraping against the tile. You made me believe you loved my father, she said. You made me defend you. He stepped toward her. Ratch. She flinched. Don't. I didn't move. I didn't interfere. This wasn't my part to play. I lied to myself, she whispered. I thought your charm was kindness. I thought your ambition was just drive. I thought you loved me. But all you saw was a door. And you kept trying to pick the lock. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting between us. Then came the last mistake. He straightened. The humility cracked. Just like that, the mask slid again. What's the big deal? He said. You're old. What do you need the money for anyway? You sit in this house, drink your coffee, collect your checks. Why does it matter if I take a few things? You wouldn't even notice if I hadn't tripped the trap. And there it was. The arrogance. The real Blake. Rachel stood silent for a long moment. Then she said 4 words I'll never forget. Pack your things, Blake. He laughed, dry and bitter. You're kicking me out. No, she said. I'm leaving with you. But only long enough to drive you to wherever you're staying. After that, we're done. You don't mean that, he said, voice rising now. You're just upset. Frank's manipulating you. I finally stood. No, Blake. I'm done manipulating myself. You showed us who you are. Rachel just finally believes it. For a second, he looked like he might argue again. Then his shoulders dropped. He turned and left the kitchen. Rachel stayed behind. She picked up the coffee cup I'd set for her and sat back down. She didn't drink it. She just sat there with both hands wrapped around it like it was the only warmth left in the world. I don't know who I married, she said. You do now? We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, Blake started the car. Inside, Rachel finally cried. Blake was gone by noon. He packed fast, sloppily. A duffel bag zipped halfway, shirts hanging from its mouth like an animal's broken teeth. He didn't speak when he left. Didn't look at me. Rachel followed him out the door, keys in her hand, face unreadable. I watched from the porch, arms crossed. The old wood warm beneath my feet. She didn't say goodbye. Not then. It took her 2 hours to return. When she did, her cheeks were red and blotchy. She walked straight into my arms like she was 7 years old again and her goldfish had just died. I didn't say a word, just held her. I dropped him at the bus station, she whispered. He asked if I'd reconsider, so we could still fix this. Like he hadn't spent a month plotting your robbery. I nodded. He told me he was doing it for us, she said bitterly. That if I really loved him, I'd understand. Did you? She pulled away. I did. I loved the man I thought he was. But not the man who stood in my childhood kitchen and called my father useless. I let her back inside. That night, she slept in her old bedroom. The pink wallpaper was long gone, painted over in a soft eggshell blue during her college years, but the twin bed was still there. So were the photo albums she'd left behind. We sat for an hour looking through them. Birthdays, school dances, camping trips. A simpler time. A real time. The next day, she made the call. I want to file for divorce, she told the lawyer, her voice steady. Irreconcilable betrayal. 3 words Blake never saw coming. A week later, the vultures started circling. Collection agencies called the house first, then her cell. Turns out Blake had been juggling more than job interviews and schemes. He'd taken out loans under their joint account, missed payments, defaulted credit lines tied to Rachel's name. He'd used her identity, her trust, her credit history, like he used everything else. She froze the accounts, canceled every card, reported the fraud. But the damage was deep. Worse, he'd lied to her about his family, claimed his mother was helping him recover from a back injury, said she supported their marriage. Instead, she answered Rachel's call with a weary sigh and a curt truth. He's burned every bridge. He came to me 2 months ago asking to borrow against my life insurance. I told him to go to hell. Nowhere left to hide. Blake had no home, no savings, no support system, no wife. All he had left was a glitter-stained hoodie and a name that would show up in Google search results alongside attempted fraud and family betrayal. Rachel started sleeping again. She got a job at the local library a month later. Said it felt good to be surrounded by quiet, by stories, by truth that stayed on the page. Every morning, we drank coffee together. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't need to. I watched the weight fall from her shoulders slowly, like wet clothes drying on a line. Blake tried to call twice. She blocked his number. And the rest? The rest crumbled behind him. He'd built his future like a sandcastle at high tide. All charm, no foundation. And when the waves came, there was nothing left but glitter in the surf. It's been 4 months now. My house is quiet again. But it's the kind of quiet I like. Honest, unpretentious, earned. The kind of silence that doesn't hide secrets in its corners or tiptoe through the hall after midnight. Every morning, I drink my coffee on the porch. Same mug, same chair. The oak trees are starting to shift from green to gold. Twin Falls autumn creeping in like an old friend. Rachel lives with me still, for now. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. She didn't cry in the lawyer's office. Just signed the papers and looked up like someone who had finally exhaled after holding her breath for too many years. She works mornings at the library now, handles the front desk, runs the children's reading group on Thursdays. Says she likes the peace of it, that she's learning to trust her own voice again. And every morning before she leaves, we sit for a few minutes together, just the two of us. Sometimes we talk about books, sometimes about the neighbors, sometimes we don't talk at all. But there's comfort in the silence now. Not fear. She asked me last week if I ever regret letting them stay here. Blake, in particular. I thought about it. No, I said. Because now I know. And knowing is better than pretending. She nodded like she understood. I've started reclaiming parts of the house that had fallen dormant. Cleaned out the garage. Refinished the porch swing. Reorganized my safe. Even though I don't need to, I like the ritual of it. Like it's a reminder that everything valuable is still in my hands. In my closet, tucked on the top shelf, I've kept that little music box I used to test Blake's greed. It still has glitter in it. Just a trace, caught in the hinges and along the lining. Every time I open it, it plays the same soft tune Elaine loved when Rachel was a baby. That box isn't just sentimental anymore. It's a symbol. My favorite kind of security system. Blake won't be back. And if he ever does show his face again, he won't find a broken old man waiting to be manipulated. He'll find a father who knows what his silence is worth and how to use it. This house, the walls, the floors, the memories, it's mine again. Not because I fought for it with fists, but because I reclaimed it with truth, with patience, with clarity, and the kind of justice that leaves no bruises, but lingers far longer. If there's one thing I've learned from this chapter of my life, and I say this as a man who's lived through war, market crashes, marriage, and loss, it's this. Betrayal rarely arrives how you expect it. It doesn't always come in the form of shouting matches or slammed doors. Sometimes it walks in quietly, smiling, carrying grocery bags and offering to drive you to the bank. Sometimes it sleeps under your roof, eats your food, kisses your daughter's forehead goodnight, and still sharpens the knife behind your back. Blake didn't break into my house. He slid into it. He didn't steal from me with a crowbar or a gun. He used charm, familiarity, a soft voice, and a patient nod. The most dangerous thieves don't need to pick locks. They wait for you to hand over the key, and then they smile as they turn it. So here's what I want you to remember. If you're listening to this and thinking, could this happen to me? It already is. If your gut has gone quiet, but your brain keeps making excuses for someone's behavior. If the person in your life only offers help when it's convenient, and always seems to be standing closest to the safe, the will, the checkbook. If you find yourself saying, maybe I'm just being paranoid, more than once a week, you're not paranoid. You're observant. Don't let anyone tell you that suspicion is the same thing as bitterness. One is a tool. The other is a poison. And tools, when used wisely, can save you from ruin. I wasn't perfect in how I handled things. I waited longer than I should have. I wanted to believe the best of my daughter's husband because believing the worst would have meant questioning her judgment. And that was too painful. But when the line was finally crossed, I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I documented. I observed. I prepared. Because revenge doesn't need to be loud. Justice doesn't need to be violent. It just needs to be sharp, calculated, clean, and yes, sometimes covered in glitter. I suppose what hurts the most isn't that Blake tried to steal from me. It's that he looked me in the eye, called me dad, and still saw nothing but a vault to be cracked open. He never saw the man who'd worked 35 years in the same lumber yard to build a life for his wife and daughter, who went without vacations so Rachel could have summer camp, who skipped retirement so the mortgage could be paid off early, who cried alone in the bathroom the day Elaine passed away so Rachel wouldn't have to see it. No, Blake didn't see any of that. He saw a tired man, a vulnerable man, a man he thought would go quietly. And in a way, he was right. I did go quietly, but I went strategically, and I came back stronger. So if you're in a similar spot, if your daughter's husband smiles too much, asks too many questions, offers to help with your finances, be careful. Watch. Record. Prepare. Don't shout them out of your home. Show them the door with such clarity and control that they never forget whose house it truly was. We live in a world where age is mistaken for weakness, where patience is mistaken for permission. But I'm here to tell you, don't ever let them confuse the two. You are not weak. You are not confused. And you're certainly not finished. Maybe you're just getting started. So tell me, have you ever caught someone betraying you? Did they underestimate you? Did they smile as they reached for your trust? If you've got a story, share it. Maybe we're not as alone as we think. Oh, and one more thing. A week after the dust had settled, after the divorce papers had been filed and the glitter vacuumed from every crevice of my floorboards, I got a call. I was on the porch, same spot, same coffee mug, same creaking swing beneath me. The sun was soft that morning. Birds were starting to rebuild in the pine tree out back. Even the wind seemed more respectful now. The phone buzzed against the table. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before I picked it up. Frank Eastman? The voice asked. I hadn't heard that name spoken like that, in that particular tone, for over 12 years. Speaking. There was a pause. Then a laugh, low and dry like someone blowing the dust off an old memory. Damn. Still sounds like you chew nails for breakfast. Depends on the brand. Another laugh. Frank, it's Clay. Clay Burnett. The name sat in the air like the scent of gasoline. Clay Burnett. My old business partner. My friend once. The man I hadn't spoken to since 2013, when a land dispute over a Montana mining claim turned into lawyers, accusations, and silence. What do you want, Clay? Look, I know it's been a long time, and we left things bad, but I got a letter, registered mail, about an old property. That mining site we split. You still own half. I didn't answer right away. That mine was buried deep in the past, literally and figuratively. 50 acres of mineral rights, half a mountain, and a contract drawn in ink that never quite dried. I said cautiously. Well, Clay said, clearing his throat. Turns out the region's gone hot again. Some new survey says there's value. Real value. Copper, maybe lithium. Buyers are sniffing around. Still I said nothing. He rushed to fill the silence. All I'm saying is, if you're still listed, you might want to dust off your copy of that deed. Could be worth something now. I leaned back, the swing creaking beneath me. A glitter-covered thief had just tried to rob me in my own home. Now a ghost from my past was calling to discuss hidden treasure buried in the hills of Montana. Funny thing, stories never really end, do they? They just circle back. We're new faces. Knock on the door when you least expect it. Sometimes with charm. Sometimes with apologies. Sometimes with opportunity wrapped in danger. I ended the call politely. Promised nothing. Said I'd look into it. Then I went inside, opened the hallway closet, and pulled down an old shoebox marked Montana. Inside, the original contract. A faded topographic map. A compass with a crack down the center. And a photo of me and Clay, arms slung over each other's shoulders, younger and dumber and full of plans. I sat there on the edge of the guest room bed, Blake's old room, and stared at the photo. Then I smiled. Not because I trusted Clay. Not because I believed in sudden fortune. But because I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Readiness. You see, when you survive betrayal, not just the act, but the aftermath, you come out changed. Sharper. Less trusting, sure, but more focused. And strangely, more hopeful. Because you know what to watch for now. You know the weight of quiet. You know how to smell a lie before it's spoken. And you know how to wait. So maybe there's more ahead. Another story. Another test. Another trap waiting to be exposed. Or maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just the past coming up for air before sinking again. Either way, I'm ready. Because Blake taught me something, even if he didn't mean to. He reminded me that being underestimated is one of the most powerful positions a man can hold. So if Clay Burnett wants to come back into my life, he better not bring a fake key. Because this time, I've got more than glitter waiting. I've got eyes open, and the whole house watching.